They've done it. They've killed the V8, you guys. First Lexus with the GX and the LX, and now behind me, Infiniti with the 2025 QX80, a giant luxury 3-row SUV. My question is it a budget Escalade or a rebadged Nissan? It could really go either way, so let's go find out. Gone is the V8. They've replaced it with a VR35 twin turbo 3.5 liter V6 with a 9-speed automatic transmission. Hit our drive modes down here on the touchscreen. I'll get to this later, but you might have to hit it a couple times to get there. Sport mode. Let's go. Wow. That fake sound coming through is as offensive as it is in the Civic Type R. That's really bad. Bad or good, I don't really care, but it sounds incredibly inauthentic at higher RPMs. Good thing is though, you don't need to be at higher RPMs, okay? So versus the outgoing 5.6 liter naturally aspirated V8, this twin turbo V6 makes 450 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque, which is 50 more horsepower and 113 extra pound-feet over the V8. So you sacrifice a little bit of that really instantaneous V8 growl for higher torque, like a ton more torque when those turbos spool up, and they do not take long to spool up. And you gain a little bit of fuel economy. So this is rated for a combined 13.8 liters per 100 kilometers or 17 miles per gallon, marginally better than the V8. I was expecting, as I'm sure a lot of you guys were, a huge gap in fuel economy. After all, that is, that effectively is the argument, to axe the big displacement, gas guzzling V8, not just for optics, but for fuel economy. And as far as power delivery goes, even though it's a 9-speed, and especially if you're in normal, but even in sport here, it's gonna shift up. It's gonna try and get those RPMs down as low as possible so that when you do hit the gas, there is a little bit of a delay. Whereas with the V8, it would have a tendency, I only drove the Armada, but it would have a tendency to kind of stay in those lower RPMs because it just had instantaneous smooth torque anyways. It didn't need to shift down, whereas here, there's a bit more shifting going on, but it's smooth, it's refined, and it is fast. Not very often you're gonna have to go full throttle. The throttle pedal is very sensitive. It feels as if, the top of the pedal, they make it very sensitive so that you feel like you have a huge reserve of torque left, and Infiniti states that in their literature, on their website. That's what they want you to feel. That's a luxurious feel, right? It's what Rolls-Royce does with their gauge cluster. It just lets you know how much you have left. Hey, you have an abundance. That's what real wealth is, right? Well, it feels like that. And then here I am thinking like, okay, well, they're just gonna do that. But then when I go, half throttle, 80% full throttle, it's not gonna feel as big of a change. It does. It still just has more and more to give, even at the top of the pedal. Is the V8 sound missing? Yeah. Do you have to wait, a split second for those turbos to spool up? Yes. Paddles are not incredibly responsive, but definitely responsive enough for a luxury SUV. Steering's heavy, really good materials throughout, which we'll get to, but everything driving the QX80, it feels substantial without being uncomfortable. It's got double wishbone suspension all around, and it's doing its best to capture what it can of a luxury feel out of a body-on-frame SUV. So this one, the Autograph, has been spec'd with air suspension, and it does have electronically controlled dampers as well, and it's quiet. It's insulated. The cabin noise here, one of the best things about the Q80, it's just super isolated from the road. I think it's a huge step up. What it also does, it will raise and lower the vehicle if you want it to. When you park, it'll lower to make it easier to get in and out. it is really comfortable. Again, just like the Lexus GX, the Yukon, big body-on-frame SUVs, you're going to get those larger bumps coming through the chassis. The saving grace here, though, is the QX80 seats are awesome. There was a blow-off noise. I've driven this car like at least 150 kilometers. That was the first time I heard a blow-off noise. Not mad about it. So all QX80s come standard with 4-wheel drive. Up here in Canada, for you guys in the States, you are able to get a base model, base spec with rear-wheel drive, much like you can with the GMC Yukon. What they've done with the QX80 is they've actually sacrificed off-road capability for luxury and refinement. They've got rid of the 2-speed transfer case. So the QX80 actually, compared to last generation, has less kind of low-speed, loose surface off-road capability. There's no 4-low function here. There's no real mechanical locking rear differential. It is a brake-based differential back there, which might not be the end of the world. It still has a 4-high function, so you can lock it into 4-wheel drive, constantly sending power to both the front and rear wheels equally. Love that. That's going to come in real handy. The Armada, on the other hand, still retains that 2-speed transfer case, so if you need that extra additional off-road capability, the Armada is probably the better option. Okay, so it handles well for a body-on-frame SUV, something that weighs just over 6,000 pounds, but that's not the only thing we're concerned about, because, you know, this is also a status symbol, especially over the Nissan Armada, which is based on the same platform. So Infiniti's gone, they've kind of split the road. There's a fork in the road between the Armada and the QX80 here. The Armada sticks with a more aggressive kind of, you know, it almost looks like a GMC Yukon from the front end. It's got a more American feel, whereas the QX80 is unapologetically a Range Rover. It's even called the Autograph. You guys, just please stop. A few months ago, I drove the Santa Fe. That was called the Calligraphy. We're running out of words. They've done that both in naming and design. The slim headlights speak to that. The side profile of the QX80 speaks to that as well. Having no pillars that are body colored along the side. It looks good. It looks quick. It looks like it's expensive, and that's what they're going for here. The grille isn't too big, you know, it's not a Lexus LX, it doesn't go all the way to the ground, which I like. They've got some aero bits down here to increase fuel economy and aerodynamics. It's just a little bit, it's not doing much at the end of the day. And then in here, hidden in the grille, there are some vents at high speeds that will close to further improve aerodynamics. It's a good looking SUV. It's a lot to look at. Anybody listening, I like the Armada better. I like how that looks better. There's kind of a light bar on the back that isn't a light bar. It's kind of split up. They're trying to make it look like bamboo. They've also referenced in their design literature reflecting light off of water. They're talking about that too. So there's a bunch of kind of Japanese influence that they're trying to bring in. It has some smooth lines though. You know, it's not ugly. It's not my favorite, but it's also far from ugly. I love the way they've integrated the running boards into the bottom with the line between the wheels. Looks phenomenal. And then they do have the door handles that sit flush when you lock the vehicle or when you're driving. Let's step on the inside, see what's up. The main focus here for Infiniti was the user experience, the day-to-day drivability of the vehicle, and the comfort. So the interior is by far the largest change. It's great. So in this top spec, we do have a bunch of semi-aniline leather. We've got this, it's not quilted, but this kind of pattern, leather pattern on the seats here. Awesome seats. I will say, way more comfortable than the Yukon I drove. Really good lumbar and adjustable bolsters. The one thing they're missing is the thigh extension. That's a big miss. And then of course with this top spec Autograph, we get the clips audio system. I think it's just Klipsch. Really good system. They do have speakers in the headrests, which we've seen before in the top spec Yukons. Basically what you can do here is if you want to take a phone call, you can have the audio on your call just come through here, or music if you want to keep the rest of your passengers quiet. So that works. Really good materials, nothing that stands out as like loose or creaky. I mean, the quality here, if you covered up the badge, I would not guess that this was underneath it all a Nissan product. Not in a million years. One of the biggest changes are these dual 14.3 inch displays up here. They work really well, and they have integrated a few things such as maps into the screen, which work well. Of course, Google Maps is their native system, which I can appreciate. Of course, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is standard in all QX80s, but you are able to put the maps on the center screen, which is great. It's got a heads-up display. Your turns will come up there, of course, as well. But one of the top things I love about this system, it's easy to use, it's responsive. I think I prefer Genesis, their system, when it comes to just usability and how they organize all your settings, and it looks more modern. One of the best things here, if we go hit the camera button, is the rear view camera, the 360 cam. It's one of the best, really high resolution cameras, and one of the integrations that they've made, which I have not seen a manufacturer do. You've got a few different settings, camera options. If I go to the ultra wide view and then just expand the view, it takes up basically the whole screen, so it just makes it larger. The one thing I will say, it does have Google Assistant built in, but for me, it's only worked to control things like the heated seats and stuff like that with my voice if I touch the button to prompt it first. Turn on heated seat.
All right, turning on the seat heater for the driver.
Now if I go, hey Google, turn off the heated seat.
Okay, turning off the seat heater for the driver.
Okay, thanks, it did that, right? Now I go to Android Auto, my phone's already connected. And then I go, hey Google, turn on the heated seat. Nothing. When you prompt it when you have Android Auto up, it doesn't work. So I don't know what's up with that. Is it going through the Google on my phone? I do have an Android phone. I have no idea, but it's not working. It only works when you touch the screen, which completely defeats the purpose of a voice commander. That's only when you're using phone integration, but I thought that was kind of a weird glitch. Down here, climate control, that's a huge thing they've changed. The Armada got to keep the physical controls for the climate control. That's a huge miss. I feel like, the QX80, they're trying to make it feel more upscale. The more screens, the more high tech, the better. No, I would much prefer the climate controls in the new generation Armada over this. It's not that it's terrible. They're always here, which is awesome. It's haptic feedback, so it kind of vibrates when you touch it. But there have been instances, especially like there, I'm hitting rear climate control, 6, 7, 8. On the 8th button press, it finally brought me to the rear climate control. Same happened with the heated seat. It almost is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, okay. But when it works, it's responsive. Down here, wireless charger in the center. We've got 2 cup holders, huge amount of storage space. And in the center console, we have a huge box of storage down here. And in the Autograph trim, it's cooled. Infiniti suggests you bring a 6-pack of soda along to the picnic and keep it cool on the way to the picnic, right? That is so Japanese of Infiniti. This is so clearly not an American vehicle, because if it was an American vehicle, it would be a 6-pack of beer, not soda. Let's go to the back row. All right, this is why you got the QX80, so you could fit so many people. The Autograph trim is only available as a 7-seater with the captain's chairs up here. If you go with the lower trims, you can get the option to just have a bench seat up here. Unlike the Yukon, which had those kind of cheap plasticky controls down here to fold it back and forth. I don't know if they've updated that. The Yukon just went through a huge refresh, but there are buttons on the top of the seats here. If I click that, it will fold in. Infiniti says you can also keep your child seat. I don't know, I don't have kids, what they're called, the child safety seat. Whatever your kid sits in, that can stay here. And actually, there's a ton of room here now to walk in to the third row, which we'll get to in a second. So it is slow. You know, when I reviewed that Yukon, you go to the back, you hit the controls to fold all these seats down. It's like near instantaneous, at least from the electronic controls in the back. But these, of course, recline with the Autograph trim. You get massaging second row seats, but like I mentioned, you know, they'll move your muscles around a little bit, but they're not going to put you to sleep. You could sit back here and have a really great kind of chauffeured experience. I will say, no sunshades. I just noticed that. We've got a huge moonroof, of course. There's a camera up here, along with the interior dash cam and whatnot, that the driver can like spy on the passengers. If they just click a button, they can look at the camera. You also have your climate control back here, heated and ventilated second row, of course. Okay, so I'm 5'9", and my head is just touching the roof, So 5'9" is kind of the max. There's a ton of legroom though, heated and cooled. All right, so just stepping outside, I just noticed the fuel door is not perfectly aligned. So I really hope this is just this specific QX80 and you guys don't find this on the ones you see in person, but that's an issue. You know, all the panel gaps are great, everything else, but also the key fob, if I was spending $112,000 USD, I would want something that feels a little bit more, you know, substantial than this. It's kind of plastic, it's really light. It just doesn't feel that great. Pretty good. You can actually fit quite a few things back here, even with the third row up. Now, controls. We do have controls. We can place all of these seats down electronically, which is great. I will say these are slow. Oh, what? That one did not want to do. Is something blocking it? But there is a ton of space back here. They fold flatter than the previous generation did. There's a little bit more space, enough to notice it for sure, versus the previous generation in terms of cargo space. And like I mentioned, if you do get the captain's chairs, that will always be there. So it's sticking up just a little bit, but really good materials for the third row. Got a power outlet here and just generally everything that you would expect from a huge 3-row. All right, so pricing. The QX80 starts here in Canada at $110,000. As tested, $128,000 Canadian. But that's what the spec sheet said for this exact one I'm sitting in. I went to Infiniti's Canadian website and this exact spec was actually like $6,000 more on their website. Either way, expensive. And then of course, there's stuff like towing capacity. So the QX80 can tow up to 8,500 pounds, which is more than any Yukon, which is more than any LX, but it's not as much as the Ford Expedition. That can tow, the new generation can tow up to 9,600 pounds. So quite a bit if you're interested in the towing side of things. Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you soon.